Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the MedTech Impact Podcast, where you get to hear from leaders and innovators who are shaping the future of medical technology. I'm Kyle Cruz.
And I'm Richard Meiklejohn.
And we're your hosts of the show.
So today on the MedTech Impact Podcast, we are delighted to be joined by Andreia Trigo and Frank Khan Sullivan from Enhanced Fertility. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having us.
Well, we're delighted that we have both of you on. We have CEO, we have CTO, we have husband and wife, a dynamic duo. This is going to be an awesome story to share to get the background of how this came together. Before we do that, though, let's frame it for the audience. So we always like to start by telling them what is the big problem that Enhanced Fertility is looking to solve.
Oh, thank you so much, Kyle and Richard, for the lovely introduction. Well, even though I'm CEO of Enhanced Fertility, our story started a long time ago. I was actually diagnosed with infertility when I was just 17 years of age. And it was so traumatic and challenging to cope with that. What we've realized is that 1 in 6 couples all over the world are infertile. So it's a problem that is affecting a lot of people. But just a minority of them, less than 2%, are able to access the care that they need. It just takes too long to get the diagnosis, too long to have treatment, more than 7 years to have a baby. But if we look at governments, insurance and providers, even if they wanted to help the remaining 98% of people who need help, they just don't have capacity to respond to the demand. There's not enough doctors, different treatment plans. It's just too confusing and not enough capacity to respond to this very big problem.
And so as you're sitting there today, you're talking from the UK, and what's that journey been like in terms of accessing services and accessing support?
It's incredibly challenging. In the UK, even though there is a national health service, treatment is not widely accessible for everyone. There's a huge amount of restrictions. Patients do tend to pay privately for fertility treatment. Many of them end up having to go abroad where they can access treatment in a more timely fashion, where they're able to access treatment that maybe is not allowed in their own countries. So it's just very challenging for patients to access the treatment that they need. And equally for clinics, it's very difficult for them to treat patients from all of these different countries in a way that is, seamless. And often it takes months and months from a patient approaching a clinic to eventually starting treatment. So it's a very fragmented journey for something that should be so private as husband and wife at home. And finally, you're surrounded by multiple doctors, tests, confusing approaches with the uncertainty of, is this actually going to give me a baby at the end of the journey? We don't know. So it's a very, very challenging journey for these 1 in 6 couples.
Yeah. Andreia, thank you for starting off the show and being brave enough to share your story. You did a wonderful job to helping us really understand and see that bigger picture problem too throughout the industry. So of course, please tell us now, how are you trying to solve this problem? How are you trying to help scale these infertility efforts?
Yes, well, Enhanced Fertility is the first Europe-wide patient triage, diagnostic, and treatment center. We just want to provide a seamless journey. So we provide clinical grade at-home testing, including at-home bloods, swabs, sperm analysis, and scans, and a decision support platform for clinics, both in the UK and in the EU, to speed up that time to diagnosis and the start of treatment. And that means that patients can start treatment up to 3 months sooner than they would otherwise. So we know that it's incredibly challenging for both patients and clinics, but it's already making such a big difference for both of them since we've launched just over a year ago.
Yeah, time is really so precious. So being able to um, allow folks to start, their treatment earlier is everything. Frank, how does the diagnostic testing work?
It's an at-home test. The whole point is that you want to decentralize medicine. You want to bring the bring the test to the patient as opposed to the patient going to the test. That's
Hmm.
job number one. Job number two is really trying to mitigate the impact of fragmented IT systems from the US to the UK to Europe to the rest of the world. Everyone has the same problem with data. The family doctor won't talk to the lab won't talk to the hospital healthcare records, the hospital won't release healthcare records to a private provider for treatment. It's very fragmented. And yet, when you bring automation, when you bring data in a very compliant way to the people who need it, and when you flip that model around and say that the patient owns their data, not the provider, what you're able to do is unlock two things. You're able to make data-driven decisions. You're able to see those blood test results, the getting both partners tested. A lot of providers will only test only women or only men. There's no one place where you can get all of your tests done in a convenient way. But most importantly, you need to get that data, that information to the right people who can help you make the treatment choice. And we're using some clever AI tools to make that decision process a little bit easier with the clinician, because it's not just about a one-size-fits-all model. It's about making a lot of little decisions, 1,000 little decisions in the right way, answering one question: what is going to deliver a live birth? What is going to deliver the right outcome from my unique set of circumstances?
Mhm. And so you've got this assessment here and this data coming in. Like, where does it go though after the patient, does that in-home test? Where does it go afterwards?
That entirely depends up to the patient. If the patient wants their data deleted and removed, they can do so. If the patient wants to retain it with their family doctor or their primary physician, they may choose to do so. As a sort
Mhm.
of standard, I think Europe has been a little bit better in protecting consumer data and protecting healthcare data more
Yeah.
so than the US. I realize that standards like HIPAA have come along, but traditionally, because we have kind of started as a European business, this idea of privacy by design is built into the technology.
Hmm.
The data never leaves the jurisdiction of the patient without their consent, and everything is really tied back to this idea that it's the patient that owns the data and they're in control. It's not the provider, it's not the national healthcare system. It probably won't be the insurer either. It's the patient's choice what happens to their data.
Great.
This is great. Absolutely, Kyle. I mean, I think what I'm hearing loud and clear is you're taking something that's a huge emotional and stressful burden for couples, and you're providing this huge layer of accessibility. If I'm a customer or a patient coming to you, what does that look like in terms of the customer journey? Where do I start? Where do I go?
Yeah, so most of our customers are coming from fertility clinics. So they might have approached a fertility clinic, but they need to be tested before starting treatment. So at the moment, clinics are able to add the patient to the platform, and patients will complete the clinical history, all the admissions process. They will receive all the tests at home, from blood tests to swabs, scans, everything completed at home. They receive results very, very fast. Most results are in their hands in 48 hours. And that means that clinicians can then visualize results in a very specific way in the platform and make data-driven decisions around what is the diagnosis, what is the treatment protocol that is most likely to result in a baby. Now, we also have patients that come to us directly without a provider referral, and that is absolutely fine. So they can come to us to our website. They can start a process by buying the questionnaire, buying the tests, and we have in-house nurses, psychologists, gynecologists, and urologists that can help them decide on the next steps. So really that's one place for everything they need to speed up the intake and admissions process. Because the sooner we know what's wrong, the sooner we can start the treatment that can get you to baby.
I'd like to add an important point to that. Andreia is
Mhm.
extremely well practiced with towing the company line with investors, but it's so important for your audience to understand that that this business is personal. Andreia's been an advanced nurse practitioner for nearly 20 years. I've been in the data and AI space for a while. What happens when nurse marries nerd? You're going to have a medtech scale up, right? But we were patients before we were any of those things. Every decision that we do has been informed from a place of wanting to reduce the suffering of others. It's about improving the convenience. It's about reducing the cost, things that cost, thousands of dollars, bringing that down to low hundreds of dollars and delivering a faster service. The thing that motivated us to build the service and the capabilities like that is because we were on the receiving end of a healthcare system that failed us. That's why we kind of look to private enterprise to sort of accelerate the science and think, here we are now, a few years later, since Andreia was that scared 17-year-old girl not knowing. Imagine then if we had the service now, there wouldn't be that heartbreak, there wouldn't be that high variability, there wouldn't be that emotional roller coaster. So I think it's important, yes, to look at this from the business perspective and look at this as a market. You take cancer, for example, it's got a 1.5 to 2% prevalence and it's worth nearly $300 billion. Fertility is worth about $22 to $25 billion and it has a 17.5% prevalence rate. This is a large underserved market. So we can talk business, but we can never forget that we were patients before we were entrepreneurs.
And
Yeah.
how are you ensuring accuracy too with the tests? Are these already methods that are used today where your platform is again making this a more scalable way of getting access
Mhm.
to these tests from a patient and doctor physician standpoint?
Yeah, that is a great question. So when we talk, once the blood fluids, either when the bodily fluids, either blood, semen, or whatever is oozing that we are collecting from you gets to the lab, those processes are very much established. So we're not changing anything in that sense, but we are speeding up the ability of those fluids getting to the lab, right? So, and in order to do that, it is a highly regulated market. So we had to obtain UKCA and a CE mark. We had to test if people were able to collect the samples at home, a bit like during COVID, we were all learning how to collect a swab from our nostrils at home, and most people had never done that to themselves at home. So we're teaching people, okay, can you actually collect the bloods, collect the semen, collect the swab at home? And then we had to test, can these actually be transported to the lab? And do they sustain their stability? And can the lab then analyze them? So we went through a series of studies to prove that it works. We found that for most patients, they found it easier to do this at home than to go to a clinic. That in terms of the blood sample, it's less painful to prick your finger than to have it from a vein as normally. And, and they started to say that they preferred that to the standard delivery of care, where it's very time consuming for them to take time off work and to travel. Some people were traveling over an hour just for testing. And for clinics, we also involve them in every step of the way as we were designing. What they notice is less admin work, and that it really makes the process of the diagnostics faster, so they can start treatment sooner and help more patients.
Yeah, those were some really good points there too, Richard, which I really liked of what Andreia was saying, is that it's not, you're not reinventing the wheel here. And the nice part is I think so many people are now used to doing these at-home tests, whether it's a health condition or it's 23andMe, or one of those ancestry type of platforms. So very simple, very effective, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, Kyle, absolutely. I think what's ringing through loud and clear here is the experiential part of this, the fact that you're bringing this to the patients, which again is a huge trend we've seen started pre-pandemic, but really obviously accelerated through the pandemic with the necessity around that. I wonder now again, if, just to revisit this as a potential patient. So I'm coming on your platform, I'm getting a test kit you mentioned would be sent to my home. And then, what does that look like? So I get that test kit and how long would it take for those results to come back?
So Frank he's just showing us a test kit, but this is the blood test kit. It's very similar to what a diabetic person would do. So they prick their finger and they have to place a few drops of blood into this container, and then it's shipped to the lab through the post. And it comes already with a prepaid envelope, so minimal hassle to our patients. They get the results 48 hours afterwards. So it's very, very fast. In terms of semen analysis, the same thing. So they can collect it at home. It's picked up by the courier so that it gets to the lab that same day. That is really important because sperm has less stability. And in terms of ultrasound scans, what we are piloting now is the ability of patients to do a transvaginal scan at home, inserting the probe and having the sonographer on the other side of the screen interpreting those images. So everything done at home in just a few days, potentially able to start treatment the following week.
Let me say that improving access to diagnostics is the first step. It's not the last step. It's the biggest problem, and it's the one that we had to attack first. But let's say you're resident in Boston. That's where your primary physician is. The best specialist for your type of condition like PCOS or endometriosis, or you might have had ovarian cancer and you were evaluating your options. That specialist might be down in Texas, and the lab might be over in California. And you see where I'm going with this? If you can mitigate the impact of distance and fragmented data, then you can get all of the right information, all of the ingredients in the recipe to making the best clinical decisions into the hands of the people who need it when they need it. And if you can do that in a compliant way, it really starts to unlock things. It starts to unlock the market, because when you have this convenient at-home service, like we're all going to choose Amazon for our specialist parts, we're all going to choose e-commerce, we're all going to choose something at home that is cheaper and more convenient and more private. We often have a little joke internally. We say that we'll offer consultations to help a patient with all sample collection except certain sperm testing samples. We don't offer that consultation because it's quite personal. But you can see that testing and diagnostics is the front end. Better decisions from data is the back end. And that's why Andreia and I work very well as the nurse and the geek. And that's kind of how we've structured our team of 11 now. We've grown from 1 to 1.5 to 4 to 11 now. We've just raised our pre-seed round in February, which was a milestone that really helped us steady the ship. But now business is getting serious. We've already had early wins with patients. You can see some of our reviews. Gosh, I sound like a shameless marketeer here, but it's true. Go and have a look at the reviews. Go and talk to our patients. Go and talk to our clinics. We track something called NBS. Lots of firms have their North Star metric. We've got ours, NBS, Net Baby Score. In the last 20 months, there are 18 live births that are directly attributable to our technology. That is a North Star metric. That is what gets us out of bed in the morning.
That is awesome. That is real impact being seen before your eyes. And it's so exciting because you're growing and you're scaling. And I should note that, we're recording this in early May 2024. You're going to be coming to the US very soon. So, what lies ahead for you? What's that sort of pathway for the next 6 to 18 months?
That is a great question. When it comes to Europe, we want to be fully established in Europe. I very much envision, us helping more than the 2% who are being helped at the moment. So capturing more of the European market. Of course, we're going to the US in a couple of weeks. We want to explore what it looks like to enter that market and help as well the clinics there. Because we know, just like in Europe, clinics also struggle. They're also treating patients from different locations. We know the US clinics are also struggling to treat more patients with limited amounts of endocrinologists and embryologists. So how can we help them streamline their processes so that they can treat more patients in the same with the resources they have? So we're very much looking at checking that.
Yeah, I think, infertility is such a wide spectrum of disorders, and it's reaching near epidemic levels. But the problem is the same all over the world. People are not having enough babies, and that infertility rate is getting worse and worse. Google it. Google fertility replacement rate. You'll see what's happening, and that has a massive impact. But we've always known that the life sciences community and the research community around certain centers of excellence on the East Coast, we know we went out to San Francisco to do a bit of a recce and lay the foundations a year ago, because I know that some of the best data talent and some of the best AI talent is centered around there. The US is absolutely our next step. The question is, do we find the right partners to take that step with? That's the whole point of joining the Innovate UK MedTech delegation. It's to recognize that we have some very clever technology that reduces the amount of time it takes and the cost of getting a diagnosis. That's not just unique to British patients. It will be very relevant to American patients. It's a global proposition. The thing that we're most interested in is finding go-to-market partners who are looking to experiment with pushing testing out to the edge, not keeping it centralized. And the second thing that's really interesting is we have an open and proprietary data set that is the most comprehensive fertility outcomes data set in the world, that is anonymized and ready for research. This is an absolute goldmine for those that want to simulate the impact of treatment, dosages, titration to effect for new drug discovery. This is super useful for insurers who want to adjust risk premiums to make it more fair and equitable, especially if they've got patients going out of network. The data is really the valuable thing here, and if we can package that up, well, we look forward to meeting our American cousins.
Well, I mean, you set us up for the next question then, Frank and Andreia. How do people in the US that want to join your mission, want to help with your go-to-market strategy, how do they get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So they can, of course, find us on LinkedIn, Andreia Trigo or Frank Sullivan on LinkedIn, or they can go on our website, efp.clinic, EFP standing for Enhanced Fertility Program. And yeah, just reach out. We're very open to collaborations, and we're really excited to explore the US market and work with providers, researchers, and people who are really passionate about this mission of improving accessibility to fertility care.
Well, there's no doubt there's a lot of folks that are passionate about this. And Frank, what else you got to add to that?
I'm going to say Andreia is doing a wonderful job with the front end, but I would say Google Andreia Trigo TED Talk.
You're not being biased at all, Frank.
I'm completely biased, but that's acceptable because you're married to me. If you want to understand the future of our business, you need to understand our past as a founding couple. Have a look at Andreia's TED Talk on how we found meaning despite suffering. And I think that is something that fits with the American psyche. They're rooting for the underdog. They want to see success. You know what they say, money talks and BS walks.
There you go. You heard it. And what a dynamic duo. I said it up top, but really the nurse and the nerd, you know, you guys really are the perfect marriage, and you clearly have an amazing vision to help couples across the world. So thank you for coming on today and sharing your mission.
Well, Kyle and Richard, it's been a real pleasure to share our story, and thank you for being so open to hearing it.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, and thank you everyone for tuning in to another episode of the MedTech Impact Podcast. Once again, thank you to our guests, Andreia Trigo and Frank Khan Sullivan from Enhanced Fertility. Until next time, I'm Kyle Cruz.
And I'm Richard Meiklejohn. Keep innovating.